Hi BookTube, Lynette here, and I am recording my February TBR for you today. So, to dive straight in with it, the first book that I want to read, but I have actually finished reading because we are already partway into the month, is the second book in J.D. Robb's In Death series, and that is Glory in Death. I am reading this as part of a year-long read-along with PNR Romance and Under the Covers book blog over on Instagram, and their challenge is to read one in-depth book a month for the whole of 2020. So I did start in January. I read a book in January. I read the first in the series. So this month I'm going to be reading the second in the series, or have read the second in the series. That book is Glory in Death, and it's the continuation of Eve and Rourke's romance that started in book one. And Eve is a homicide detective with the New York Police Department in a futuristic New York, and Rourke is a billionaire who they meet during the first book because Rourke becomes a suspect in a murder that she's trying to solve. And again, this book carries on with the same theme. So there is a murder at the beginning that Eve is called in to investigate and solve, and somewhere along the line Rourke gets involved. By the start of this book there's been a bit of a time lapse between the first book and the second book, so Eve and Rourke are a little bit more established in their relationship. So now we are seeing Eve coming to terms with that relationship and with relying on someone else. It's a pretty standard formulaic murder mystery. So someone gets killed at the beginning, the homicide detective gets called in to investigate, another murder happens, things get thrown off the scent. They're very easy to pick up and put down. They're easy books to read. I do have a small issue with J.D. Robb's writing, in that she switches point of view very quickly sometimes with no warning, so I have to reread a couple of lines just to find out whose head I'm in to continue with the story. But yes, if you like a little bit of romance, if you like a good murder mystery, then I do recommend picking up J.D. Robb's books, and I'm glad to continue with this one. I've then plan on reading 2 library books because they have to be back later on in February. The first of those library books is a sci-fi series. It's I think it's just a series of short stories, and that is The Silver Wind by Nina Allen. So like I say, this is a series of short stories. It seems like I didn't really go into it much when I picked it up. I just saw the cover and thought, oh, that looks good. Read a little bit about on the back and thought, oh, that sounds like a really good book. But I've started reading it, as you can see, and as I'm reading it, it seems like it's actually going to be a series of short novels rather than actually one novel itself, but it's going to follow the same character and go through various timelines. So I did struggle with it a little bit when I first picked it up. It's not dense in its storytelling, but you do have to get into it. It's very slow, and I'm not great with slow reads usually, but yes, I am going to be trying to continue with this one and hopefully take it back finished rather than take it back part read and then wonder what actually happened in it. So that's the next book that I'm planning on reading. As I say, we are already partway into the month. It's the 8th of February, and from the 7th of February until the 20th or 21st of February, 21st of February, Sam over at Thoughts on Tomes is running one of her rounds of Tome Topple. And Tome Topple is where you aim to read books that have more than 500 pages. And she sets a series of challenges, but there's no obligation to meet any of those challenges. There's no obligation to finish books. It's just so you can make a dent in books that have more than 500 pages, those books that you might be feeling intimidated by because of the size. it's giving you a pass to read them, and if you get to the end of the month, put them down again. So I decided, again, because it's a library book and it's got to be back by the 20th, I decided that I would start reading Laini Taylor's Strange the Dreamer. Now, I don't know too much about it. I'm not one for researching books, but I do know that it was really, really big on YouTube a couple of years ago. Laini Taylor is a well-loved young adult author. And so when I saw this in my library on the shelf waiting to be picked up, I thought I've got to give it a go. Again, because of the version that I've got, it is more than 500 pages, so I am going to give this one a go in February and over the next couple of weeks, and I'm probably going to pick it up later on today. So I should be starting this very, very soon, because I've got 2 weeks to read this now. So if I finish Strange the Dreamer before the 21st, I have another book on my TBR that I want to pick up and keep going with, because again, it's another tome. It's in excess of 500 pages. I think it's actually in excess of 700 pages. I have already started it, so I am a little bit way through. And then this book is The Great Hunt by Robert Jordan. It is book 2 in his Wheel of Time series. And this book is about a group of young people who have left their home because their home was attacked, because they have magic, and there is foretelling of someone being reborn who could break the world, and that is potentially one of these young people. We already know which one of these young people it might be, but for anybody who hasn't read the series, I'm not going to give that away yet. You need to pick up the first book and read it. This is a reread for me. I read this about 15 to 20 years ago now, and I enjoyed them at the time, but I didn't complete the series because I was reading them as they were being released, and I got to book 9 and I got a bit stuck in the middle of that one, and I just never went back to them. So I'm hoping that I can continue this reread now and finish the book eventually. Like I say, I'm a little way into it. As you can see, I've made a start on it already. So I will see how I get on. Hopefully I can make a big dent in this one. I don't aim to finish it in February, but I just aim to take a great chunk out of it in February if I can. It would be a bonus if I do finish it. So then if I, once I've got to the end of Tome Topple and finished those first 2 books, maybe made a dent in the 3rd book, I then need to carry on with my Romance Appley read a lot challenges for the year. I have one carryover from January that I haven't finished yet, and that is City Lane, which was to read an urban fantasy. I've picked up A Fairy of Bones and Gold for that one. I have already started it. I started it after I finished Glory and Death because I wanted to carry on with the books that I kind of have to read, and I just wanted something that was a bit not quite so, I didn't want something heavy, basically, and I knew I had heavy books going, and I was struggling a little bit with The Silver Wind, and I just needed something that was not going to dull my appetite for reading. So Fairy of Bones and Gold is the first book in a series, and it is a male-male romance set in a version of Manhattan in New York where there's magic and there are magic users, there are werewolves, there are vampires, witches, you name it, they've got it. And there is a potential war brewing between good and evil, and evil have been committing murders in Manhattan, and Patrick, the main character in this book, is called in to try and solve the murders and stop the potential war from starting. There's all sorts of magical creatures, and we're building up to the end of an explosive end of this book where they try to stop what's going to happen from happening. I have already started it. Like I say, I'm more than halfway through it, thoroughly enjoying it, finding it a little difficult to put down, but I think I am going to put it down to go back to Strange the Dreamer for a little bit. Then when I finish that one, I have 2 more picks for Romanceopoly for this month. The next one is New View, and that is To Read an Enemies to Lovers romance. This ties in quite well with February for me, because one of my favourite authors, Kay Bromberg, has released a new book, and that is called Then You Happened. This is about Tatum, who owns a horse ranch, and Jack, who comes along to help her with the horse ranch because she's having some troubles. In the first chapter, you meet them both in the first chapter, which I've already read because Kay Bromberg put it out for free to try and grip people into reading it, which she doesn't have to do with me. But there's a lot of friction there. They don't like each other to start with. And the story is where they go from there, how they save the ranch and ultimately fall in love and have a happy ever after. So that will be another good read for me. Kay Bromberg writes very, very well. You feel everything in her books. She does real life emotions, and she doesn't shy away from the tough stuff. So this will be another good read. And then if I get through that one, and then still have time to do another Romanceopoly pick, then the next roll I landed on a library square, which is to read whatever you want from any of the romance genres at all. There's no theme to the square at all. So I chose Royally Yours by Emma Chase. This is continuation of her royal romances that she started a couple of years ago. And this time it's being told from the point of view of the grandmother, who is the current queen of the country that we're set in. It goes back in time to when she met her now deceased husband, and how they fell in love and the challenges they faced, because theirs was not an easy love story. And again, it's been sat on my Kindle since it came out, but I just never got around to reading it. There was always something else. And then last year I was in such a big slump that I never actually got to it. So if I finished those 2 books, I've set myself a huge task this year. I'm going to try and read at least 3 or 4. I can't remember what I've set myself now. I don't have my goals in front of me. Books. So yes, so 3 or 4 of the books that I've started and put to one side, I want to finish those this year. And also I want to read some of the classics that I've had on my Kindle for about 10 years now. And I've got a randomizer app on my phone which I use, and for the books that I've picked up but put down again, it has very kindly chosen for me A Song of Ice and Fire bind up. The version that I have on my Kindle has all 5 of the current books on it, and I have read the first one. I read the first one last year. I've listened to the first one on audiobook, and I've watched the TV series from series 1 to 8, and I'm stuck on A Clash of Kings. I've tried listening to the audiobook twice. I've read the prologue of the first of Clash of Kings, but I just never seem to get any further. I think it's because it's such a switch to different characters and there's so many names to remember, and I just keep getting confused. But I'm going to give it a go. So again, I might try and do this for part of not Romanceopoly, for part of Tome Topple. If not, I'll just try and read a few chapters this month and just try and push on through. And for the classics, the randomizer has picked David Copperfield. David Copperfield will be a reread for me. I read it many years ago, so I've got an idea of what to expect. I can't really remember what happens in it, but I have an idea. So that should be quite an easy read for me. It's just finding the gumption to sit down and read it. Those 2 aren't must reads for February, but they're books that I'd like to try and get to if I can. If I'm struggling at all, then I do have an alternative plan. Instead of just picking something random to read, I have decided I would continue with my Harry Potter reread that I started right at the very end of 2019. And I will move on to Harry Potter, let's put it the right side, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince by J.K. Rowling. This is my excellent copy of the paperback copy, the original UK covers. I own them all in the original hardcover and paperback cover, as well as some other specialist ones which you can see there. Oh no, wrong way. See there, that I'm collecting. So again, they're easy reads for me. I absolutely love Harry Potter. I'm a nut. Can you not tell? For Harry Potter, and I love the stories. They're easy reads for me. I know that if I get stuck at all during February with the books I'm reading, because some of them could be quite tough reads, that I'm going to be able to pick this up and keep going, and I'm not going to fall out of love with reading like I did this time last year. And if I get through all of that, and again still feeling slumpy, then I'm going to pick up Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Again, these two aren't essential finishes for me in February, but I am on a bit of a Harry Potter kick, so I probably will get to these because they're shouting at me from my bookshelf, and I really, really want to get to them. And really, really want to try and do something with them in this month. So that's all the books that I plan on reading in February. Let me know what you're planning to read down below, and we can talk about it in the comments, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye.